Let's finally build some highways, and let's start with a big interchange. We only focused on doing the inner parts of the city so far in the series, without worrying too much about the outside infrastructure, but the time finally arrived when the temporary city entrances cannot keep up, so let's build some proper ones with proper highways, but more on the overall plans later. Welcome everyone to this new Asturis episode from City Skylines. We move away from the city towards the river where we first started building the custom bridges long time ago. The interchange, the new one, will be built further upstream, so there will be another bridge and all the necessary connections. But you will all see that, so let's just go build it. When I first started building this map, I already planned it so that the city is just going to sit roughly in the middle, and there are going to be these valleys kind of aiming towards it. So it only makes sense that all of these highways are going to be built so that they are going to originate from the valleys, and in this particular case follow the river, and in some different cases just follow, the bottoms of the valleys pretty much. That's kind of what I already indicated with some of the railways, for example, and we are going to just copy that with the highways. So there are actually going to be quite a lot of highways or different highways going towards the city, but unlike in Aurelia, they are not going to go directly inside of the city. They are going to all go to this ring around the city, which is not really going to be like a full ring because obviously the city faces the bay and we are not going to build any kind of bridge over the bay. That would just not work with the space elevator and all that. So it's going to be like a half ring or something like that. It's basically just going to be the main road or main highway around the mainland part of the city with lots of interchanges, with these kinds of like highways just going perpendicular away from the ring, right? So that's kind of like the tried and true approach that even in real life is used, and visually I think it's going to be working fine in City Skylines, and most importantly, these kinds of highways are going to receive some interesting amounts of traffic that are obviously going to be directed into various parts of the city. So, gameplay wise, that is kind of necessary. We have to do it. Like I said, the temporary connection that we built, I just copy pasted that outside connection, placed it near one of those central areas that we built in like episode 2 or 3. And that's no longer, keeping up with the demand for cargo and all the new citizens that are moving in on and so on. So we really have to provide something final, and this is going to be one of those connections. There are going to be many more connections like these, but this is just the first, and as we continue building the city, I'm just going to be adding these kinds of connections so that I'm not just going to build the entire system in one project in one go, because I kind of like building these as well. So, I kind of want to just spread these projects around the series. Alright, so that was the basic plan, and now we are at the start. So we are going to build this first interchange. And I don't really want to build simple interchanges. I want to build something a little bit more complicated. And these days we have the network multi-tool, the intersection marking tools, node controllers, and all these kinds of things. So we can really we can really build beautiful and complicated interchanges at the same time and do them reasonably fast. Yeah, that's kind of the most important thing, I suppose, in all of that, because if it was just too painful to do these, then I probably would not bother. Anyway, these are not the highways that I introduced with that stacked bridge, because there I was using something slightly different. I downloaded the new highways, the Metropolitan State Expressway, I think. The abbreviation is MSE. I'm not exactly sure what it stands for. I'm probably going to link it in the description, just like the previous highways, but I'm not going to be using those previous highways because I really like these. These are really, really good. I do have some points about these that I don't exactly like, but overall they are very good, and they are actually taking really well these kinds of changes with the node controller on the intersections or on the like mergings and leaving lanes and all these kinds of things. So that's actually really nice. They are very easy to work with, and they just have very nice looking like a bottom, right? If you are going to do these bridges and elevated segments, they actually have a really nice looking like structure below the main road. And overall, they are just looking, fine. So these are the highways of choice that we are going to be seeing all around the highway systems around the city. And I'm going to rework that stacked bridge with these as well. Unfortunately, they have slightly ordinary looking tunnel entrances, unlike the hanging highways, for example. But that's not really a big deal because I'm going to be building like a custom tunnel portal in this particular case anyway. Right, so what exactly do we need to build here? What is this interchange going to connect? So you could have seen me right in the beginning build with the network multi-tool some kind of a main highway that's going to originate at the edge of the map, and then it's going to continue towards the city. But as it's approaching the city, pretty much exactly where this high-speed railway crosses the river, it's going to turn towards the river, cross the river, go towards this ridge, go underneath it into a tunnel, and then it's basically going to form that like a bypass around the city, and it's eventually going to go to that stacked bridge from some time ago, all right? Now, we are not really going to build all the way towards the stacked bridge today. We are just going to focus on this place where the highway crosses the river. Now, there's going to be another highway, and that's going to be the highway that just continues parallel to the river and then kind of turns around the coastline of the space elevator bay and then just goes along the coastline to the edge of the map, all right? So that's basically going to be the second highway that is going to just enter the map, yeah, enter the city. We are not going to build that one either. We are just going to like indicate it, and I'm going to put those map entrances there. I'm just going to copy paste them from the edge of the map a little bit closer because I'm not yet sure exactly about the path that I would like to take with that highway. We are going to decide that when we expand the city some more. Now, this interchange is not just going to be a connection between those highways, but it's also going to form one of the entrances to the city. So this is very close to that area where we built, for example, that tram line along the river bank, and right next to it, parallel to it, we built that slightly wider road, yeah? And that's exactly going to be the road that eventually finds its way here towards this interchange right here. I'm building it right here. Yeah, you can see it with the network multi-tool with those buildings there on the right, and this is exactly where I'm connecting it to the entire interchange. So it's basically how many? 1, 2... Well, it's basically like a 4-way interchange, but not exactly in like a single point, right? There's going to be this exit on this side of the river, and the highway merges, or yeah, kind of highway merges actually, is going to be on the other side of the river. So it's going to be like a interchange that's spread over like a large area. But it is very much a single interchange. It's not two interchanges side by side because, as you can see, over the river, I am crossing it with 4 separate networks. I have the 2 middle highways that are just going to go straight, and then I have the 2 side highways that are forming or the exits. So it's not going to be, the traffic is not going to be merged together, and there are not going to be some kind of random connections all over the place, but it's going to be clearly separated, the traffic going straight and using the interchange basically. So that's the basic plan. Right, so I'm doing kind of some new things here and there. So I'm, for example, using the node controller in this particular case. I'm not really sure if I've done that ever. And I'm just trying to use the nodeless configuration and do these kinds of like splits between the separate directions and this like a street looking road or network that is eventually going to continue into the city. I also needed to think about how the rest of the city is going to continue towards this place. Am I going to build some structures around the interchange or not? But I eventually decided that I'm actually not sure, so I'm just going to prepare some kind of space towards the riverbank. As you can see, I'm going to turn the highways here a little bit inland, so I can just prepare for some kind of future expansion, and we will see. Actually, I'm going to be building that place in the next episode, but right now when I'm commentating this, I have not started it yet, so we will see. We will see. I really cannot give you any spoilers because I literally don't know them just yet. So also, network multi-tool, when I was building this, by the way, I don't think that I built highway interchanges with network multi-tool yet, like ever, right? Because in Aurelia, I did not have it just yet, and I kind of finished all the highway interchanges kind of early on. and then I just use it for some decorations, but I don't think that I ever used Network Multitool for this project. So this is the first time, and I have to say it's amazing, especially the loops. I remember back in the day I was really struggling to make the loops look somewhat okay, especially the edges or the ends, right, where it needs to turn and do something else. But now with Network Multitool, this is just like criminally easy, even feels like. Also, it helps that these particular highways are really easy to work with. They have very nice different modes. They have that ground segment, which has like the like a wall below it. I'm not really sure. Embankment, that's the word that I'm looking for. It has like an embankment, and it sits on a wall, and it doesn't pull the terrain up towards it, so you can actually kind of play with it. It's maybe a little bit non-standard approach when you are working on some kind of uneven terrain, but overall it's actually really, really nice to have that. Finally, some kind of highways, that are right from the start made for like big customization. That's actually really welcome. And then we have these kinds of ramps for these highways that are reasonably thin. They are not like the Shuto highways. They do have a shoulder, for example, so they are a little bit wider, but that just means that they look slightly more believable maybe in these particular cases, and they are very, very easy to connect to other networks. So I suppose it also helps that I've done this a couple of times with the Node controller, so I kind of know what I can and cannot afford. But one particular thing also that I noticed with these highways is that they really take very well, like from a vehicle movement side, they really take well the Node controller changes. You're going to see that later when I'm going to do really distorted nodes and segments, and cars are just going to, just blast through them like absolutely fine. They're not going to slow down. I mean, they will in some kind of situations, but I can easily just do some tweaks with the Node controller and it's going to be absolutely fine. So that's actually something that's not entirely like guaranteed for every single network. I'm not really sure why that is. It's probably just a combination of the widths and the lane widths and these kinds of things. And I suppose that this particular highway just has it right, or something like that. But it's just really easy. So this is exactly what I'm talking about. In here, I needed to build like 3 separate networks that are just going into these two-lane highways, right? And this is like a very complicated connection, like gameplay wise, because those very short segments are super distorted. But as you could have seen there, cars were just going through it as if they did not know that it's distorted like that. So that's perfect. I'm able to finally do these super customized connections that I was kind of afraid of doing. Now, there is some kind of disadvantage because right now this is the only entrance into the entire city, so there will be a lot of cars. And because I created new connections, they by default had all the tourism enabled, yeah? And you know me, I don't like tourists in City Skylines. The mechanic is not exactly great. They tend to, spawn and despawn the cars a lot more than the ordinary citizens. So I usually try to ban them, but at this point I didn't. And all of them just immediately rushed into the city and created this huge traffic jam together with all the cargo traffic as well. So I'm going to ban tourists. I already did, of course. So in the cinematics, the traffic on this interchange is going to be way lighter. And it's going to be lighter because, there's pretty much only this direction where people can enter this interchange. The rest of the directions are kind of just for decoration right now because the rest of the highway system is not yet done. That's, kind of the point why we need to just, expand it in the future. But anyway, let's talk more about the technical side of things. So we have a 4-way interchange, basically. Now, on the side of the city, we have that huge loop. Now, this is probably going to be very difficult to explain. So let's just say that you want to go from the city into the highway, all right? So if you want to turn right, there is just like a very ordinary looking right-hander turn for the ramp, and that's fine. But if you want to turn left, you're first going to go to that loop and just loop around. You're kind of going to turn left to the loop and then just loop around, gain some elevation and reach the bridge. And then you're going to be on that, like a separate side lane, which is eventually going to, after it clears the entire area of the interchange, it's eventually going to merge into that straight path, right? So that's kind of straightforward. It's kind of like a trumpet interchange, actually, in a way, but with the exception that it doesn't connect to the straight path, right? It just connects to that side highway because it needs to go to the rest of the interchange before it joins the strait. Now, on this side of the river, I had some limitations in regards to space. I did not really want to create some kind of huge loops, and I certainly did not want to, go into the river too much, and I did not want to do like extensive terrain changes either. So we had to do this, which is like a design that I really like. It's basically this like a very small loop that is going over the straight line, or under it, in this particular case, underneath that high-speed railway as well. That's kind of a limiting factor in this place, height-wise. And it's going to serve for both going into that side highway and also from the side highway to go across the river again. It's kind of like complicated to explain it like this. Actually, you know what? I'm probably going to put a picture that I quickly did on stream in MS Paint. I'm probably going to put it right here. It's maybe not going to be exactly all that descriptive again, but it's probably just going to give you some kind of an insight how I planned this. It's not exactly built like that, but the basics are there, I suppose. But at the end of the day, it was just building it, and then seeing if it works, if it doesn't, if you have the space, don't have the space. Kind of like an iterative process with these complicated interchanges. Although this one is arguably not that complicated compared to some of the previous ones in Aurelia, for example. So at this point, I was pretty much done with the rough thing. And it was just a matter of doing the heights and then doing the details. So the heights in here, I was trying to pay attention to not really do some super crazy, grades over these kinds of little ramps. So I, try to maintain it so that it would be reasonable. The entire area is not really super limiting, but there are some limits, like I said, the high-speed railway and the space, of course, on the other side of the river. So we really do need to keep that in mind. But overall, this wasn't really that big of a deal. I remember building interchanges where fiddling with the heights was a bigger headache, but with this one, it was okay. Anyway, now we need to create some kind of a bridge. So what is the situation here? We have the river. And the river is not really that wide, but, the highway needs some kind of a unique structure for the bridge anyway. By the way, the highway is curved going over the river. Not entirely. It's maybe like one half of it is curved and the second half is straight. So we cannot build an arch. And it's not exactly a great condition for like a suspension bridge. So the only option here would be to either have some kind of a beam. But then again, we don't want to have any pillars in the river, and for a beam it would be a little bit too large, and this curved condition is actually not exactly favoring it. So we have to do a cable-stayed bridge. It's actually something we haven't done, I believe, on this side of the river. Well, we haven't done it anywhere, because I was saying that I don't particularly like this kind of bridge, but well, I suppose depends on the kind of conditions that we have, and this particular condition is just screams for this type of a bridge. So I downloaded a couple of new bridges. I was just browsing through them. I was, kind of choosing between various styles and everything, and then I just said, nah, I'm just going to do something super minimalistic, and this is the result. So I'm just using a procedural object, some kind of a column. It was probably a pillar. I recolored it, or well, retextured it with procedural objects, which put some kind of a generic looking, concrete looking texture over it. And then I just used the cubes, just the procedural object cubes. I just made them this gray or white, and then I just made them very, very thin so that you can't even tell that it's still like a square cross section, right? So I'm kind of, saving some performance. Obviously, if every single one of these cables was an actual tube with lots of vertices, then, that would not be exactly ideal, and you can't even tell that these are rectangles basically. So then it was just a matter of stretching these cables towards the supports from the bridge. I was using intersection marking tools there to put garbage bins in distances, very, very specific distances between each other, so that I can then put the cables exactly to those positions, and then with procedural objects go for each and every one of those and make them go towards the center of the pillar. I prepared like a thin pillar so I could exactly see the center, and then I just put the finished thing over it using the layers, making it invisible and visible again. So that was a reasonably quick process, I suppose. It was, surprisingly easy to do with all the kinds of tools that we now have in both procedural objects, intersection marking tools, and all these things. So, it's actually kind of surprising because I kept thinking about the projects in Aurelia when I was doing them back in the day, and these kinds of additional tools are really making things really, really easy. I mean, not super easy, but easier, yeah? Let's say it this way. Right. Now, since the bridge is curved, we could not really do like a standard looking cable stayed bridge. So I decided that on one side of the river, the pillar is going to be on the left, and on the other side on the right, all right? Or the other way around, depending on how you look at it, doesn't matter, but the point is that they are on opposite ends or opposite sides of the highway, which means that there would be like a significant, like a perpendicular force kind of pulling the pillar towards the road, yeah, making it just fall down. So we also needed to provide some kind of cables that are just going to prevent that kind of loading, yeah, or offset that kind of loading, offset the forces that are pulling the pillars in that direction. So overall it creates this like an interesting shape. It's I suppose something not exactly standard, and it's just something new. And at the end of the day, it's still reasonably minimalistic, which is I suppose something I was aiming for. We are not really in the city anymore. We are very much on the edges of the city, if not outside of the city already. So doing something super fancy doesn't make much sense, like in the city where we did, for example, the very colorful looking arches, but over here it's perfectly fine to do it like that, and it actually fits way more. So I'm also going to do that custom tunnel portal. Like I said, we are just going to use these kinds of walls and cover the existing structure that is part of the network to kind of unify it, because I have different tunnel entrances over here on different levels. As you can see, that was kind of the necessary thing to do because of the different heights, and I could do that, because why not? Like I said, I'm not really limited with the heights too much, so I can just do these kinds of things, and eventually it's going to turn out looking good. This is actually kind of a result of me not wanting to do like slopes with these walls, because it usually distorts the texture and doesn't look so good. So I decided to go for these stairs, and it's actually creating like an interesting shape in this area. So that's kind of nice. And on one hand, it's symmetrical because it's the stairs are the highest for the straight direction and the side tunnels are lower. But the tunnel on one side is only one lane, yeah? So it's creating this asymmetry, which it's kind of working actually visually. It's just creating something slightly new. Now, this is probably the most important bit, right? It's putting the intersection marking tools on the nodes. This is the thing that I at first was not sure of, because these particular highways, they have these stains on the texture by default, right? On the segments. But the nodes are completely flat color, flat asphalt color. And since I'm using very dark colors for the highways, I'm repainting them with the repaint mod. By the way, I'm not using CSUR loader anymore for the repaint. I completely got rid of it. I'm just using repaint for this right now. It's kind of highlighting those stains so that there really is like a visible difference between the segment and the node. But unlike the CSUR, for example, where this was a very big problem, you have these like dividing like props put on the segments edges, right? You can see it everywhere in here. That on the edges we have these like gray lines separating the segments. So they're also creating this like a separation between the different textures of the node and the segment, and it's actually not really that bad anymore, this difference. So I can actually live with it, and to be honest, I actually like it, yeah? So I'm going to be using these highways also because of that, and that was pretty much the reason why I didn't want to use them at first, but eventually I did. Now anyway, so the intersection marking tools, I decided to use these chevron shapes and make them slightly different. So we are going to use that white part very wide with not exactly that much space between them. It's just something new, something unique. And then we are going to do these colored markers really on the lanes. I decided on my own color scheme in this particular case. So I'm going to do basically red for some kind of caution, like merging, for example. So all these kinds of like merging places, lanes, and places where two networks meet, basically. Then I'm doing the blue. The blue I'm just using for the loops, for I don't know, symbolizing some kind of like a tight turn or, well, not really tight, but like long turn, yeah? Then we have the green. I'm thinking that the green is just a exit lane, yeah? So if you are in there, then, be prepared to just, turn or something. And then yellow. And yellow is just a different color that I really wanted to put somewhere, and it's probably symbolizing something like you have to choose, right? You're going straight, but you will have to choose to turn left or right. You cannot go straight. So that's only in 2 locations on the entire thing, and eventually it's just making things a little bit more spicier, just more colorful, just a detail to put here, nothing more. Right, so, well, this is the finished thing. It's a reasonably okay-ish interchange, I suppose, and I really like how the bridge structure eventually ended up this minimalistic. I did not go crazy with it at all. It might be unrealistic. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I did not really bother with that too much, to be completely honest. But the cables are, kind of reasonably positioned, especially the ones that are, like I said before, that are preventing the pillars from falling into the road, basically. And there is also that like bigger beam underneath the pillar that just holds the highway, towards the pillar. So I also did these kinds of things. So I was also inspired by some shapes of some bridges that I downloaded from the workshop. So I was just looking at those and using them like that. But I did not use the structure. I just used the basic shapes, as you can see. Right, so you can notice that I did not touch the high-speed railway at all, and it's actually looking slightly bizarre in some of these cinematics because it doesn't have any supports. Yeah, it's just flying in the air. We are going to do that in the next episode, all right? So next episode is going to be another bridge, and this time it's going to be the bridge for this railway that's already here, and we are going to not just build the bridge, but also some areas, kind of expand the city around it, so that we are eventually going to build all the way towards this interchange that we built and just close off the entire city from this direction, because that's just making sense to finish these areas. As you can see, the traffic is reasonably heavy already. I mean, it's kind of light considering the capacity that we built, but it's nice that we can see all these connections being used. This is my favorite. This is absolutely my favorite. The red lanes are coming from one of them. The one on the left here is over the bridge. Yeah, that's basically from the city. And the second one is like a turn around. Yeah, for the people, just making like a 180 degrees so that they can gain the elevation and go across the river from the other side. It's something that's probably not exactly super efficient, but it allows us to just concentrate all the connections into one place. And that particular connection for the 3 ways into that two networks was very, very satisfying to see working. This is the overall shot of the area. As you can see, the interchange area that it takes is reasonably large, and that's probably something that we will see more times around the city, like I said, although this particular perspective kind of distorts it with the city in the distance. Anyway, like I said, we are going to touch that high-speed railway in the next episode nearby. You can clearly see it right here. And, well, that's going to be all for today. So, thank you for watching this Asturis episode. Hope you liked it. If you did, then please do all the things below the video, all the writing and clicking and all these kinds of things. It really helps. And big thanks to all the channel supporters, channel members who decided to directly support the channel by becoming channel members. Thank you very much, guys. All right, thank you again. Take care and goodbye.